Hello, welcome to Wednesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. I am delighted as ever to be joined by the one and only Keith Jackson. Keith, how's it going?
How we doing? Yep, good. Bit frantic last half hour, but there you go. That's the newspaper world, isn't it?
Yep, and we're also joined by Record Sports' Michael Gannon. Mick, good to see you.
Afternoon, chaps. Hope you're all well.
Aye, you too. Keith, you say you're frantic, and I believe that's because we have an exclusive story on Record Sport Online on John Souttar.
Yeah, Hotline Live exclusive. A real strange one, this. And a bit of a blow. In fact, a serious blow potentially, at least to Russell Martin. Given that obviously Rangers found out today Panathinaikos will be their opponents, which is, as we were discussing last night, probably the worst possible draw they could have got at the first stage of these Champions League qualifiers. It's a real strange one. John Souttar, who is by far and away the best central defender that they've got, Russell Martin has currently got at his disposal, played for Scotland obviously against Iceland last Friday night, then makes the trip to Liechtenstein, sits on the bench, unused sub for that. But apparently he was in need of a hernia operation, which you would have expected, given the circumstances and how important he is, that would have happened after the end of the domestic season, back in May 17th, I think they played Hibs. But the medical department, for whatever reason, best known to themselves, maybe, I don't know if John Souttar was desperate to play for Scotland, but they delayed the op. So I believe he had the operation in London last week. I believe that he's currently rehabbing in Portugal, but he's right up against it in terms of the medical experts that I've spoken to say this is a kind of 4-week to 6-week process in order to be ready to play. 4 weeks to get yourself back to ready to train, and then a couple of weeks to to get in shape to be match fit. 6 weeks, Rangers will get 5 weeks until they play Panathinaikos. So, you hope for John Souttar's sake that he doesn't have any complications, there's no issues. But even if there's not, it's going to be really tight. And Rangers don't have a plethora of options at centre-back. Leon Balogun and John Souttar would have been first choice towards the end of last season, I think, recognised by just about everyone. And then after that, you've got Robin Propper, who, I don't think he can get back to Holland quick enough, and understandably so. I think terms are just about being agreed, I think, with FC20. So we would expect that he'll be one of the ones on the way out, which narrows down your options even further. Clinton Enciala, difficult first season, young player, inexperienced, 21-year-old. And then after that, you've got Ben Davies and Leon King, who were out on loan last season. So I would imagine that Russell Martin's probably asking a few questions as to how this was allowed to happen, meanwhile desperately keeping his fingers crossed that John Souttar's going to complete his recuperation and recovery and be fit in time for the visit of the Greeks. And when is that? The 23rd of July? So it's really time urgent. It's really time urgent, and I'm incredibly surprised that Rangers have allowed themselves to be in that position, Daniel.
Well, comments are coming in already on this. If you want to get involved in the conversation, please do so. John echoes your sentiments, Keith. He says, who on earth made that decision to allow Souttar to play for Scotland with that injury? If he doesn't make the Panathinaikos game, who plays centre-back? And along with that, Rangers, is he okay? Isn't happy. He says, Souttar's another one. If a bid came in, he has a year left in his deal, I would let go, especially if he wants to prioritise playing dead rubbers with Scotland over getting himself fully fit for us. It does seem really weird, Mick, that 2 friendlies with Scotland kind of was put ahead of the Champions League qualifiers.
I would get back even further. I mean, I don't know when it was discovered, but I think that's because of the question. When did they find out they would require some kind of surgery in the season? Because Rangers' season finished on April 17th. That's when they were put out by Atletico Bilbao from Europe. That's when the season was finished. The rest of the game didn't matter. Not a jot. So as soon as that was discovered, it should be a regular operation at that point. As soon as
I'm not sure it was known at that point, Mick.
No, but at some point after that, it was flagged up. I mean, as soon as that's flagged up, it should be taken out the firing line and getting fixed because the season was finished. And as for the Scotland games, I mean, 2 of the most meaningless friendlies you'll ever clap your eyes on.
Iceland and Lidl.
Genuine. I mean, Iceland and Dog and Duck. I mean, an absolute waste of time for everybody concerned, especially guys who have got, I mean, dozens of caps and we know what they can do.
Yeah.
So it does seem a little bit of a silly gamble to take. Listen, he might come back. He might be. He's used to it. He can come back quite sharp and just about make it. But he's cutting a hell of a fine for this qualifier, which is going to be
and Mick, of all the players that Rangers have got, and he is, I think, one of their stalwarts, big John Souttar.
Yeah.
But he has got this back catalogue of injury issues, and he's never really been able to get fully clear with it. Recently, he's done really well, but there's another little thing, and you should be wrapping a guy like him up in cotton wool.
Yeah.
I wonder. I think what's happened here, my reading of this situation would be, I think there was a real vacuum at Rangers towards the end of the season. They played Hibs on the Saturday. They kind of made it a public announcement on the Sunday that Barry Ferguson wouldn't be any further involved in the process to recruit a new manager. Therefore, they didn't have a manager. They were managerless from that period, from that Sunday. I believe that the doctor at the club, a really experienced doctor, I think he came from Liverpool. I think Stephen Gerrard might have brought him up. Well, I believe that he is also retiring this summer, so was in the final days of his contract. So that you don't have a manager to ask the question or to tell the player, look, forget about Scotland. You'll need to go and have that op. You don't have a doctor to make that decision. You don't have a director of football because Kevin Thelwell wasn't in the building at that period. So who made the decision? So you would have to look at someone that was left in charge of the medical department must have said, yeah, we'll go with that. Whoever that was might have some serious explaining to do to Russell Martin right now, I would imagine.
Aye. In the comment section, Ghostwriter agrees with you, Mick. He says, exactly, our league campaign was long gone before the actual finish. Surely a guy prone to injury wouldn't choose to play on injured. John says, Souttar out injured, Kel Surprise not. Rangers Is He OK says, if I was Russell Martin, I'd get in the blower to Mr. Thelwell, telling him to get a bid in for Connor Cody pronto. We need 2 centre-halves to start this summer. We arguably now need 3. It's a fair point, Keith, because you listed it out there a minute ago yourself. I mean, with no disrespect to him at all, but you're down to like Leon King and Ben Davies, who, again, with no disrespect, they're not the answer for Rangers.
Well, it's already been decided that they're not the answer, which is why, you know, Ben Davies was sent on loan to Birmingham. Ben Davies is capable. He's a capable player and he's an experienced player, but he's not the future.
Aye.
And he's not a guy that Rangers clearly feel that they can depend upon, certainly for a match of this sort of significance and importance this early in the summer. Look, everything I've just said there in terms of what the available options would be, I guess people would say, well, Dujon Sterling, if he's fit and ready. But again, there's so many questions about, you know, his physical conditioning. James Tavernier has shown that he could slot in, but you don't want to be going in with patchwork centre defence for a match which could be, you know, potentially £60 million plus riding on it.
Aye.
And I think what I must also caveat the whole thing by saying is we're talking about at this stage what would be available. And I'm perfectly sure that Russell Martin, although it's interesting that the head coach title does suggest that Russell Martin will now be could now be a hostage to fate in terms of what the recruitment department does. And he might be having to turn on Auchenhowie every day just hoping that a taxi turns up with a couple of centre-halves. Meanwhile, on the phone to John Souttar every day, finding out how's your progress, big man. It's a far from ideal set of circumstances, which I think has been spawned from a far from ideal set of circumstances. Where, as I said, it feels like there's this vacuum towards the end of last season, and I think this is just a really curious decision. Curious decision to make.
The only thing is, I don't think it changes anything. I think he needed 2 centre backs in regardless. But what this does, it means he has to expedite both of them rather than buying in one now and waiting till the window goes on, see it picks up. Now need to get in 2 pronto. I think that's what it doesn't change the amount of players needing that position. I think it now just changes when they bring them in.
And you and I, Mick, know that it's really difficult.
Unfortunately, Souttar, you cannot hang the hat on him for the season, and you just can't. And listen, we all know him pretty well. They know he's a cracking big player. He just hasn't stayed fit all through his career.
Yeah,
you're not going to get 55 games out of him for the season. So then that's a position you had to buy 2 players for anyway.
I think, like, I was looking back at his stats. I think he's had 68 appearances over 3 seasons at Rangers. So that tells you about
half of the course. Yeah.
It's a shame because he is such a good big player, and for me, I think he's Scotland's best centre half as well. So I can well understand why Steve Clarke would have wanted him. And he obviously scored the goal in that game against Iceland, but for the life of me, I can't understand it. I can't. It's baffled me. If you know the length of time and the short turnaround that's coming this summer, and you know the importance and the significance of the first game, which is a Champions League qualifier, it seems like an incredible gamble to take now, whether that was John Souttar's gamble to take or whether it's a medical department decision. I find it quite extraordinary. And, I think Russell Martin, John Souttar, whoever signed off from the medical department will now just be sitting there, fingers crossed, going, please don't anything go wrong. Please let this recuperation, rehabilitation process go 100% as they would want it to, because if there's any hiccup or any slight setback, they've got a serious problem. And Mick, you're right, it does expedite it. It does mean that centre-halves become a real top of the agenda, target for the Rangers recruitment department. But you and I know how difficult it is, especially at this point in the season, in the summer, when clubs across Europe, most players are still lying on a beach, and you're already up against it in terms of how do you get this guy in. And usually these deals, and you know that the transfer market, is notorious for picking up later on. That's when you maybe pick up, talent from that, that's just falling off the edge of a squad someplace or whatever. I think for Rangers to find 2 centre-halves that would be Champions League ready at this point in the summer, they're going to have to really pay a premium because clubs will know they're absolutely desperate.
Aye. In the comment section, Johnny says, hopefully Daniel put his neck on the line more next season, tries to get a word in. I actually did get a word in earlier on today, guys, on Rangers' opponents, Panathinaikos, with a Greek journalist, Antonis Oikomanidis, easy for me to say, from Greek outlet Sport24. He's obviously Panathinaikos, I wouldn't say expert, but he obviously follows the team most weeks. Shall we hear what he had to say?
Yep.
Thanks so much for joining us on the Hotline Live. Panathinaikos against Rangers. We know a little bit about Panathinaikos, but tell us about them generally.
Panathinaikos, is a sleeping giant, especially in Greece during the last couple of years. They have faced a lot of problems since 2010. They haven't been that competitive, at least compared to Olympiacos, to AEK, to PAOK, other powerhouses in Greek football. But steadily during the last couple of years, are trying to to gain all the ground that they have lost, and participating or trying to participate in the group stage of Champions League is a giant step and a giant ambition for them. It's a key goal for them to come back to European football. Last season, they were in the group stage of the Conference League. It was their first group stage of any international football for 10 seasons. So they're trying to rebuild. They're not just internationally, but both domestically, their status and caliber.
Anthony, we were told last season that Panathinaikos, they had a slow start. They were, I think, as low as 8th in the league. But then the new coach, Ray Vittoria, he came in and he really inspired the team to a great second half of the season. What kind of difference has he made to this team?
It wasn't exactly, something inspiring. The start was extremely bad for Panathinaikos at the start of the season. They were minus 10 from the top, almost mid-table in October. So the former coach, the Uruguayan Diego Alonso, was fired. Ray Vittoria came in. He did have a great 3-4 months coming in. He was undefeated with Panathinaikos for 13-14 league games. But after January, Panathinaikos declined again. They couldn't, match Olympiacos. They couldn't match. They stayed out of competition for the league quite early. So they tried to just adjust and settle for finishing second. Louis Vitoria just tried, to be more compact defensively, to try to organize the mess of the start of the season. And in his first months, he succeeded in that. But after that, Panathinaikos had a lot of problems in order to be competing, at least comparing to Olympiacos. It wasn't at that level, for sure.
We're told that obviously the main player last year was Zentin Ouhani, is that right? The player from Marseille, but he has gone back to France.
Yeah,
What difference will that make to this team?
He was on loan from Marseille. Zentin Ouhani, Moroccan international, great player. I mean, we haven't seen such a player in Greece for years. His buyout was extremely high, 11.5 million euros. But Panathinaikos can afford that. They're trying to get him again, to negotiate with Marseille, a new deal maybe. But so far it's not possible, and it doesn't look probable. It will be a huge loss for Panathinaikos, because Nahi, especially at the second half of the last season, he was maybe the most consistent and by far the best player of Panathinaikos.
There's a couple other players, Antonis, that we maybe recognise the name of. There's obviously Tete, Fotis Ioannidis, Facundo Palestri, who obviously played with Man United. If he doesn't come back on loan from Marseille, who are the danger men that Rangers should be worried about?
The three that you mentioned. Those three are,
Done your homework, Daniel. Well done.
Thank you.
You have done your homework. Those three are the most dangerous guys in Panathinaikos attack, the most gifted ones. There is a Serbian guy, Serbian international, Filip Jurisic. He was also very good last season. These four are the best. There's also Tassos Bakasetas. He's the captain of the Greek national team. He's playing as a midfielder. A playmaker. Maybe he will be the one who will cover Ounahi, the Moroccan, Ounahi's role, especially when Rangers come in from Panathinaikos. There is also Yorgos Vagiannidis. Also, I know it's a Greek name and it's difficult, but that's his name, unfortunately. Okay, a Greek international playing as a right back. Very talented, very gifted. With huge potential. These guys, Fotis Ioannidis, the striker, Tete, the Brazilian winger, the Serbian winger, Filip Jurisic, as I told you, Tassos Bakasetas, the captain of the Greek national team, and Yorgos Vagiannidis, the right back, are by far the best of Panathinaikos.
Anthony, I was in Piraeus last, I think it was December, when Rangers played Olympiacos, and the conditions that night, I had to have a big jacket on. They weren't so warm. What can the team heading to Athens next month expect temperature-wise? I mean, here in Scotland, we're struggling to get above 20 degrees. What can they expect?
Right now, we have 38.
Ooh,
right now.
Wow.
Okay, so you can be sure that there will be a hell of a warm. It will be hot as hell. It's a huge problem for anyone who hasn't, who isn't used to that temperatures, that climate. It's suffocating, really.
Even at night time, when the kick-off late evening, it will still be more than 30 degrees.
30, 35, something like that. Something like that. And for Rangers, it will be extremely luck for them if they've got something around 30 at the time of the match. It will be extremely lucky.
Antonis, Andy and I were speaking before the draw yesterday, and we were saying that this Panathinaikos was the one team that Rangers didn't want to be drawn against.
Why? Why is that?
Because of the heat.
The heat's one reason, but how do Panathinaikos view the draw? Are they happy with it? Are they confident of getting past Rangers?
For sure, they didn't want Rangers. For sure. They preferred either Salzburg or Victoria Plzen, one of these three. For sure, Rangers wasn't one of their favorite choice, and that's obvious. But they knew that the path is difficult for any club starting Champions League qualification rounds in July to participate in the league phase. They know it's a difficult path, but the tough starts early for Panathinaikos. So they didn't want Rangers for sure, but they knew that competition would come along eventually. So
and can I just ask about Cyril Dessers? I don't know how much you know about him, but there's lots of links that he might be going to IEK Athens. I'm told that he's agreed a contract, but there's some still negotiations over the price between Rangers and IEK. Is that a story you've been covering much? Is that something you've been following?
Yeah, it's a story that you know too. I with the player are okay. I mean, the player is offered to almost an extremely big rise in his salary. But the problem right now is that AEK and Rangers cannot find a middle term. Rangers continue to ask a lot for AEK. I continue to think that they have a certain, limit to go to buy Dessers. So there's, but till now there's no progress. But I think in the end, since AEK, they've agreed with the player, in the end, a solution will be found.
What do you think is the top end of the value that they can spend? We believe that Rangers want something in the region of £5 million. They want to make a profit on a player that they bought 2 years ago and they scored 50 goals in 2 seasons.
Yeah, and it's absolutely logical for them. But £5 million for AEK, I don't think that they will get there. I think that their ceiling, their top is €5 million. So it's something around 4.5 million pounds, something like that. And I think if AEK reaches that high, reaches that sum, then we'll probably have a deal.
Wow. Just before we let you go, Antonis,
yes.
What is your gut feeling? Do you think Panathinaikos will get past Rangers?
It's 50-50. Absolutely 50-50. Yeah, I don't like to bet and to think or to judge or to predict anything, especially in the summer, because in the summer is a totally different thing for every club, for every player, for everyone. But this is something that I can have even a gut. It's a 50-50 for me.
Yeah. Antonis, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. And if you make it over to Glasgow for the leg, we'll maybe catch up for a beer or what have you.
Bring it back.
That goes for you too when you come to Athens.
Thanks, Antonis. Thank you to Antonis and Andy. They'll join me a little bit earlier on. Antonis saying it's 50-50, Keith, but when Rangers could have had Bran or Servette, this is the one team they didn't want.
Well, we said that. I liked that interview. Very interesting, informative. My 2 big takeaways. It's all very well talking about how hot it's going to be in Athens. How are the Greeks going to adapt to Glasgow when it's 11 degrees in the middle of July and they're having to wear snoods and hats and gloves? The second one was, I must compliment Andy on his Greek accent. I thought that was terrific. I didn't know if I was listening to Andy Newport or Joey Barton there. So, but no, I totally agree. I think this one's really difficult to call, and I do actually, without being facetious about it, I do think the conditions in Athens will add into it. Rangers are going to have to be in supremely fit physical condition for that, and again, they don't have a lot of time to get there.
They obviously weren't the only ones to discover the European fate today. Rangers, obviously, Panathinaikos, Hibs were drawn against FC Midtjylland in the Europa League qualifying rounds. That's a tough one for them. Dundee United drawn against Una Strassen from Luxembourg. Mick, can you give us a lowdown on them?
Yeah, they like to play inverted fullbacks. They've got a false 9. Yeah, that's a buy for Dundee United. They'll be fine. That's I don't want to add to a kind of summer list of horrendously embarrassing European results we've had through the years to Maltese teams and Liechtenstein teams and all. I don't need any. Did the Vaduz from Luxembourg not put out one of their teams in the past as well?
Aye.
We don't need any silliness from Dundee United. Hibs have got a tough one, haven't they? I mean, Mitchell, we've known through the years, play against various Scottish teams. They're always pretty tough to beat. So I think that's a difficult tie. Panathinaikos. Listen, I mean, we've got to separate the name and the current team. The current side, I don't think are a particularly fantastic Panathinaikos team, but a bit kind of battle scarred from the Greek game against Scotland a few weeks ago, I think, as well. That hasn't helped our our perceptions. But I think it's a tough looking tie. I think this competition is too early for Russell Martin and Rangers. I see actual parallels to when Celtic under Ange Postecoglou. They actually got Midtjylland, and it was too early for them. And we mentioned centre halves. Celtic had no centre halves that night either, and they battled through and eventually went out. And I think this, if Rangers can get through this tie, it will be a major boost to Russell Martin early in his career as Rangers head coach. I just think it might be too soon for him this campaign.
It's impossible to know, though, isn't it, Mick? Because you've got no idea of what Rangers are going to look like.
Yeah, but it's going to be the first competitive game for a lot of players, isn't it? That are coming in as well. It just looks like it might be too soon. I don't think he should be judged on these ties at this point in time. I just think they're horrendous how early they come round these matches as well. But I just think it would be harsh to judge them on these ones. It just looks like a big ask. Although I'm pleased to hear that weather report. As someone who's going to Greece very shortly, that sounds absolutely brilliant.
I'm not sure you've got the colouring for that, Mick.
You just said it's going to be hell on earth. It sounds like absolute heaven to me. I'll get the Tractor 50 and the Speedos on for that. It's tremendous.
There's something.
There's an image.
Something that nobody needs at this time of night. By the way, I have to tell you guys, I've had a text message for Andy Newport that I would read out, but I think would be taken down off all platforms, so I won't bother.
It's worth
mentioning. You like the Joey Barton thing.
It's worth mentioning as well. John says the Rangers get parachuted into the Europa if Panathinaikos beat them. I think I'm right in saying
no. Not the group stages. If they go at this point, they got the qualifiers for the Europa. And then they went to the qualifiers for the conference. And then they could go out altogether. So at this point in time, until they win a tie, they could theoretically get put out of 3 competitions, which is a nightmare scenario. So they need to try and nudge yourself along to get to the group stages. But I think Europa should be the goal. I don't think the Champions League should be the target this season. It'd be a nice financial boost, but I don't think they'll be ready for it. That kind of challenge at this point in time. I think the Europa League is a more realistic kind of level. And that should be the target, really.
As we said, Mick, the other night, all I'm looking for from all the Scottish teams is just fill up as many boxes as we can. Get as many teams into the group competitions. It's just beneficial for the Scottish game in general. Yeah. It adds to the finances coming in. That's where all the money is. We can't get it out of our domestic TV deal. So the more teams that we can filter through into group competitions, no matter, whether it's the top tier, the second tier, or the third tier of European football, the more the merrier, the better it's going to be for Scottish football and its general financial health and well-being.
Yeah, our wee coefficient's hiding a bit at the moment. That's been done. I took a bit of a batter in recent years. We need to try and coax it back out a wee bit. The only way to do it is to win games in Europe, unfortunately.
Sadly. We mentioned Celtic there. I keep waiting for Celtic's transfer.
That was a bit creepy, Mick.
I was trying to move on quickly without anyone noticing.
I wasn't good at a creepy kind of way. It was more like a wee pet in the corner.
All right, is that what you were talking about?
Kicked him out the room too often.
Right. Nothing to do with the Scottish weather.
Aye. Anyway.
No wonder Celtic. You can't wait to get to Greece.
Moving on.
Celtic. I keep waiting for Celtic to kick off their transfer window, guys. Sorry, I need to get that out of my head. Anyway. Daizen Maeda has done an interview back in Japan. Seems to be hinting that he's going to stay at Celtic next season. Says he's looking forward to playing in the Champions League. He would be like a new signing, Mick, for all the cliches you want to that one, but they really need to keep him, don't they?
Yeah, listen, he's no offence to Daizen, not one of the great raconteurs of football. lovely chat, but not one of the great talkers. He's talking about next season. He's still under contract at Celtic for another 2 years. So he's talking about he's going to be playing Champions League next year again. I wouldn't read too much into it because money will talk. If a bid comes in of 20 plus million and doubling his wages, we'll see what happens at that point. That's a different ballgame. At this point in time, there's not a big desire to be selling, I think, a new contract. But again, we're back to this Celtic model. If a big money bid comes in, you have to let him go because that's the whole point of the process. You have to reinvest it and then start again. He's did 3.5 years Celtic, been a great success, player of the year. He's a hot ticket right now, so you'd expect some kind of bids to come in. So it is going to be interesting kind of few weeks for him. Where he goes, I don't know. Where the bids are coming from, it'll be interesting. I don't really see him being an English Premier League kind of player. So maybe further afield. So that means that's a big financial market off the table.
Why, Mick?
I just think he's very effective, but I think his technique isn't quite as spot on for that level.
Are we talking about Daizen Maeda that Brendan Rodgers has worked with for the last couple of years, or are we talking about the one that came to the club in the first place? Because I think that there's a world of difference now.
Well, the last 6 months of Daizen Maeda, it's been a different ballgame. He's been absolutely red hot. I just think that if he's playing out wide in England, there's too many fullbacks who are on 150 grand a week who can cope with getting pressed. They don't get stressed with it. They just sidestep you and pass it out. So that kind of thing that really works in Scotland isn't as effective in England. And I think you've got centre halves who, if his touch isn't quite there, they'll mop it up. And you look at your Van Dijks and these kind of guys. I just think at that level, I think he might not have the technique to cut it in England at that level. That's just my own suspicion. Unless you look at maybe the bottom half of the Premier League, he can be a tremendous asset in the break with pace. So I could be wrong. I just suspect that it might be further afield. But it just depends on what kind of bids come in. I think City would love to keep him, but with the usual caveat, if that kind of money, if the bid comes in 20 million plus, they need to do business.
Well, Jason in the comment section says Celtic need to kick out any bid less than 30 million for Maeda. Every other club in the continent charge an absolute fortune. Time for us to do the same and demand obscene fees. I actually kind of agree with that, Keith. Like, you see these players going to Chelsea and that for 100 million and stuff like that. I think if Celtic are going to part with the guy that scored 33 goals last season as Mix's reigning player of the year, I think they should kind of take the mick of it.
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's relative. Celtic are in a financially comfortable, more than comfortable situation where it's not as if they need to sell. So they don't need, we're talking about Dessers, who was the top scorer in the Premiership last season. And we're talking about Rangers looking to try and coax €5.5 million out of AEK Athens.
No.
So, that's some sort of a difference or swing, isn't it, from the guy that's the top scorer that Rangers are trying desperately to get 5.5, and somebody saying, £30 million for Daizen Maeda. I think it's more sort of in between. I really like Daizen Maeda. Obviously, the energy levels, and as I said there, the fact that he's added this sort of killer touch, be that in front of goal or with assists. There's more composure and quality to his work in the crucial areas than there ever was before, than I ever thought or I ever imagined it'd be possible to get out of Daizen Maeda. And that was one of the things I remember people saying at first with him. Well, if he could score goals and set up assists and put good crosses into the box, then he wouldn't be playing for Celtic. And now this is the guy that can do all of the above and still have the energy levels. So, I can understand it. I've got a funny feeling that I don't think he will be going, and I've said that fairly consistently. I think that he is happy and settled, but I will say Mick's right. If the money does talk in this game, everybody's a professional. They're in it to make a living at the end of the day. And if somebody comes in, and as the case with Dessers, as our guy in Athens there was saying, he's going to double his money, double his wages by going to Athens, that becomes pretty difficult to turn down. And that is, at that moment in time, it does become problematic, because you will get the player knocking the manager's door and saying, listen, any chance, you can't hold me back here. Right. And if you want to hold me back, then you need to double my wages. So, it could become an issue, but I think Daizen Maeda is I expect to see him still at Celtic next season, put it that way.
As Paul saying as well, World Cup year, he might look at Kyogo and might not want to jeopardise his place. And people have used this thing about you need to leave Celtic to get into the Japanese national side. Well, Daizen Maeda is the walking, talking, running Duracell bunny proof that that's not the case, because he's been a regular starter throughout his time, and he knows that.
So there is a risk attached if he was to go someplace and then end up sitting on a bench for 12 months. Would he still be guaranteed a start at the World Cup? Not sure that he would. So I think there's a few factors there. Most of all, what I'm told about Daizen Maeda is that unlike Rio Hatate and Kyogo, he's really settled off the pitch. He's got a young family. They're enjoying Scotland. They're happy where they are. So it would need to be, a real, and he's already earning what any of the rest of us would consider to be life-changing numbers. So it would need to be double times life-changing. And even then, you've got a lot to consider. So, as I said, I've got a feeling that Daizen Maeda will still be a Celtic player next season. I strongly suspect that to be the case. Probably
Me too.
Proven wrong.
Away from Celtic and Rangers, Mick, I understand you were having an audience with the new Motherwell manager today. How did that go?
Yeah, it was really good. Actually, I was pretty impressed with him, like the cut of his jib. Certainly talked a good game. Spoke at length about his kind of his kind of managerial kind of ethos. He wants to kind of break down barriers in Scotland and have a kind of a combination of a modern game and a kind of traditional game, and he wants to be aggressive but pragmatic and all this kind of stuff. He was. It's all these modern managers. They do have their kind of way of selling themselves, and I thought
You don't seem convinced.
No, it's just it's like I've seen plenty come and go through the years now, and managers, and I think probably 99% of them talk a lot of nonsense, really, and it's what about they do in the pitch that matters. But I must admit, I was kind of taken by him. I thought he spoke pretty well. He looks like a guy you wouldn't mess with either. I mean, it looks as though he's got a kind of a good aggressive side to him. I think it'd be interesting. It's a left field appointment from Motherwell, that's for sure. Interesting CV, obviously, starting out in Denmark, going to Sweden and all that stuff. A coach, you get a spell management in the Faroe Islands as well. We used to talk about. Then obviously at Gothenburg and then Sparta Prague and Copenhagen is number 2 at these places. So he's got a kind of varied kind of CV. A proven record working with young players. I just like the way he came across. He certainly, stuff in tomorrow's paper was interesting. He'll certainly win a few fans in the Motherwell support if they're looking to get one over. He was talking about he won a contract at Norwich with a goal against Airdrie in a trial match for Norwich. So that was scoring against the old bitter rivals always helps. And he also worked with
have we dug out the team sheet from that match?
Well,
number 15 A trialist.
Well, we know who A trialist alongside
so we can't disprove it.
Well, the A trialist put alongside A Russell Martin for Norwich.
Oh wow!
So he was talking about he knows him from back in their Canaries days as well. Looking forward to going up against him. And Paul Lambert, also Motherwell legend, cup winning legend, was a big inspiration in terms of his managerial career. Also did Norwich back-to-back promotions under Lambert. So yeah, I thought it was interesting. Proofs in the pudding. We didn't know much about Michael Wimmer when he arrived, and it didn't last long. His stay was brief. Motherwell could do a period of stability. I mean, with 2 managers in 6 months, they need a period of stability. They need a guy to stick around for 2 or 3 years and build. It's a club that, Stephen Robinson did a great job there in finding kind of rough diamonds, polishing them up, bring guys through the academy and getting them towards that and competing towards the top 6. That's where they need to be. They're not going to win the league. They're unlikely to be challenging at the top end of the table, but they can get them in the top 6, maybe the odd European trip now and again. That'd be a major success. You look at your St Mirren's and Kilmarnock in recent years.
Yeah.
That's got to be their kind of target. But it'll be a tough job for him because obviously you're looking at Lennon Miller and you expect him to go this summer, don't we?
Aye.
I think that's a certainty. So he's going to have to build a team without their best player. So yeah, tough gig, but he came across well, and I'd be interested to see how it pans out.
It's interesting though, isn't it? How many of these clubs, and there's the Motherwell manager appointed, you Stephen Presley at Dundee. And they're all coming in being told anything less than top 6 will be deemed as an unsuccessful season. So they're all coming in and they'll all be wrestling for, one position, probably?
Right.
Yeah. You see that, Keith, but see, looking back in the last 20 years, you're looking at the big city clubs, Aberdeen, Hearts and Hibs. When have the 3 of them been any good at the same time?
Aye, that's true. Aye.
There's never the three that are good at the same time. It seems to be the cosmic shake-up of Scottish football. If one of them's good, or two are good, the other one's honking. And they're never the three of them together at the same time. Very rarely.
I completely agree.
This might be the time.
Well, I was just about to say, Mick, I completely agree with that. Under normal circumstances, they can't be trusted to perform. There's, they're just as likely to be found at the wrong end of the table as at the right end. But with Derek McInnes going into Hearts, with Hibs the way that they finished last season, Aberdeen winning that cup and looking to push on again, they will spend money. I think that you've got a bunch of clubs that are competing for one spot there. And, Dundee United have... They've proved this season that they're more than likely be in the mix as well. So you could get a bunch of guys that are trying to achieve the unachievable before a ball's kicked next season, knowing that failure to get into the top six and make that breakthrough could end up with them getting binned. So interesting. I think there's a, and I think that the bottom six is going to be. There's the potential there for it to be quite a difficult season for a number of the clubs that are likely to be in those places. So maybe these clubs are right then. Maybe your Dundees and Motherwells are right to say, let's target the top six because it's doable this season, because there might be a bit of a lack of quality at the bottom end of the table.
Well, you can see there on your screen, Keith, that our old pal Gianni, he says that the new Motherwell, should have taken the gamble because Dundee are bound to go down with Elvis in charge. I mean, that's a bold shout before a ball's kicked.
Just in the door as well. Just in the door when you're getting slaughtered.
I know. That's Gianni for you. That's Gianni.
I'll maybe need to get Big Elvis round to Gianni's for a pizza. That'd be an interesting one.
Aye, that'd be good.
And just Gianni disappear out the door, by the way. His bottle would crash.
Before we finish, Marzuno says, hope we're getting a Hotline 26 calendar. Michael has January sorted. Who leaked that? Who told him we were doing that?
I'm not wearing a mankini in January. Bad enough in July.
Oh my God, there's one for the housewives.
That's it.
Yeah. No. Not in January, thanks very much.
Not at any time, thanks, Mick.
No, especially no January.
Gianni's replied saying plenty of bottles left from Keith on Sunday night. Oh, shots fired. Shots fired.
Yes, it was. Not only was it Father's Day, but it was also my wife's birthday. So that's very interesting that Gianni's decided to say that, because the next time it's time for a family celebration, we'll not be going there.
There you go. And on that note, I think that brings us to the end of Wednesday's Hotline Live with Record Sport. Thanks very much for all of your comments, except from Gianni. We'll be back to do it all again tomorrow night at 6 p.m. If you want to get involved in the conversation, please join us then. Mick, Keith, it's always a pleasure.
Cheers, good evening, folks.
All the best.
And thanks for watching.